Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Nigel here with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench. So, part 4 now of this Scammell build. If you haven't seen parts 1, 2 and 3, go back, take a look. You may find it quite interesting. We've talked about how to make the chassis nice and flat and square. We've talked about how to build suspension and keep it all flat and level and true and everything else you need. We've talked about how to do steering, how to make that work. And then we've wrestled with this front bumper. It's been quite a fun exercise at the end of the day. We've also done our fuel tanks with our bits of PE and bloody ejector pin marks in stupid places, and I found some sink marks as well in these mounts. They had to be sanded out or filled and sanded out. So yeah, and if you're wondering why these are in grey primer and that's in black, it's as I've explained in my beginner series. Grey primer is great for looking for seams and stuff, if you're looking for marks, seams, whatever, whereas black primer, get rid of that dust, black primer is great as a base coat, as a primer and a base coat, and sort of pre-shading under the green, but it's not very good for for showing up seams and stuff, whereas the grey primer is, which, as I've explained before, is why when you see people advertising their resin wares or whatever, or their assemblies like Zucchini do it, they spray everything in light grey primer like this, and it makes the details pop. And we're using it for the opposite here. We're making the faults pop. So there we go. So moving on now, we're at step 10, and we've got all these greeblies to go on the chassis. I'm going to ignore the wheels. I'm not going to fit any wheels as yet, but we're going to fit all these little brackets and stuff on there. So we've basically got these two here. These look like they're cab mounts. They're going to go on the sides, and then we're going to build up this fair lead assembly with the roller and the two pulleys at the back, and that's going to go onto the top of the rear cross member there. There's ejector pin marks in here, which need to be filled, which are a bit of a pain. They could have put them in the back, whatever. The backs of these have ejector pins, the ones that stick out, the Z-pin type thing, so make sure you sand those off nice and flat. There's ejector pin marks in the top of there, which is a shame. And that's basically that, really. So I'm just going to get all this assembled. In fact, we'll probably do this rear pulley assembly on camera. Let's have a look how it goes together. So they go together like that. You don't even need any glue. And that's going to go into there like that. So that's going to go into there like that. And somehow we're going to sandwich that between those two and then stick it on. So I'll get that done off camera. I'll get all these bits and pieces on, and then we'll come back and see how it looks. There we go. There's those little bits and pieces all fitted. These parts here, you need to open the holes up. The holes aren't big enough for the square pegs to fit into, but the rest of it all fits lovely. As I say, there are raised ejector pins on the back of those parts there, so make sure you get them off. So that's all good. So we got all that done now. I'm basically doing it so I can sort of start to get things painted. I've also been looking at these instructions regarding the fuel tanks, and looking here, as you know, when we bent those PE parts, if you look at part 7, I think it is, of the beginner's build series, I bent those steps up in there. They're on the back, they're kind of like this. They've got like a step at the end. And looking at this here, if you go back and look at when I assemble these fuel tanks, it's nothing like this. It looks like they've got two little raised areas, one there, one there. And then when you put it together, you get a groove in the two halves. And that part is supposed to go down into the groove. And you can see on the back there, you can see that little step in the end that I'm talking about. And I've got a feeling that that is supposed to go down into a groove. So I'm kind of half tempted to sort of break these away and actually put a groove in there and fit this down in, because it's sitting very high up against that fuel filler. Now, I'm not sure whether to just leave it alone for the chance of bending everything and breaking it when I take it apart and then having to redo all the paintwork and everything, or actually go and modify it. But I have a feeling that's the way it's supposed to go. That is supposed to go down into a groove. So I'm looking at my references, and that step does look considerably high compared to that fuel filler there. So bear that in mind, guys. So either snip that bit of brass off and glue it down, or put a groove in the top of the fuel tank. I suppose I could do that. I could take it off and remove that material from there and glue it down lower. I think I might do that. I'll have a think about it, and if I don't come back and talk about it again, then that's it. If I do, then you know I've done it. So let me have a think about that. So I decided I would go ahead and do it, and you can see this one is done. This one is still how the old way, and you can see it's a little bit lower. When you look at the front, you can see the difference in the height of the fuel filler. So let's get this light a bit better. I've got the light over the camera. There we go. So you can see the fuel filler is a lot higher on this one than it is on this one. Yeah. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, it's worth doing. A bit unfortunate, one of these brackets pinged off, gone in the carpet monster. I'll probably find it in a minute. So I've actually made another one from a piece of scrap photo etch. Once it's all painted, I don't think that'll notice. So there we go. All I did was took the old one off. It left a line, and then what I did was with my saw, this is one of the ASK saws, just gently sort of stroked a straight line, and then went in with this big Tamiya scriber and produced a groove for the photo etch to sit in, and then you could just run the super glue in there, as you can see. And once it's dry, we can get in there, sand it. It's probably dry already. Come here, PE sander. Just get in there and sand away the excess glue, and with a coat of primer it should look absolutely fine. So I'm going to do this one as well. I think it's worth doing because it hides those brackets as well, and the brackets aren't that nice, but it just sits a bit lower down over them. So I'm going to try and get this off without losing one of those brackets. See you in a minute. Right, so they're done now, and I've just put some Mr. Surfacer down in the back of there. We can see we need a bit more down in there. You can see a bit of a gap, so I'll put some more in there, run that down in. I thought I'd get the wheels glued together, so I got something I can work on, and that way then we can work on getting the suspension all glued up solid in the back. So that's going to fit on there. I've noticed the front wheel is quite a tight fit, so what I'm going to do there, if you've got one of these calipers, these are really handy for this. You can use the bore measuring ones, put them in there, put some pressure on here. You don't need to like try and break it apart. Just put some pressure on there and turn, and you will see that number rising. And what it's basically doing is scraping material out of the bore. It should make it fit a bit easier. There we go. Okay, so that's a good little tip. I've also checked a tyre. The tyres fit really easily over the rims, so they'll be easy to put on once the wheels are fitted without breaking anything. Sometimes the tyres are really hard to get on, so that's worth remembering as well. But the one thing I noticed, and the reason I put the camera on, is these fit together. I don't know if you can see that. They are really bad. So a little tip I've got for making sure they align, because obviously you don't want the wheels doing this because it'll make your tyres go on an angle. So little tip, just get a little drop of extra thin, drop on each side. Okay, so there's not too much on it, but it's enough to hold them together. And then get a square, or the end of a rod or a block or whatever, just something you know is square, and turn the wheel against that square. And what that's doing, it'll push the bottom rim. If you notice, I'm not touching the bottom rim, and it'll push it so that it all trues up. And then just as a final check, if you just roll it across the bench, it should go straight. I'll show you what happens if you get it wrong. Let's just put a tiny drop of glue on this one, just enough to hold it out. So that's pushed off wrong. And if I roll that about, I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of rocking side to side as it goes. So I'm just going to put some more extra thin in here. Okay, give it a little twist, and then again holding the top rim, just push it into that square and bring the two wheels in line, and then when you push it across the bench it should stay pretty good. There we go, that's all sorted now. That first bit of glue I think held it off for a while. That's lovely. So they're the inner back wheels, and they fit on there beautifully. Okay, you're not going to have turning wheels. There's no way to have turning wheels on this model. So they're going to be fixed up, but that doesn't matter because we don't want to play with it. So you can have those 4 on there, just like so, and then we've got, I've only done one front wheel at the moment, so it'll be like that, and you can see it's starting to grow now, it's starting to get quite big. So I just thought I'd show you that, and I'll do the same with the outer wheels, and then we'll have the wheels all ready, hard, ready for when we want to paint them and fit the tyres and stuff. Right, so as you can see, I've glued the wheels together. I've done the outers, I've glued them, I've gone sort of out of the instructions because I don't know why they do it this way, but they tell you to glue the inners on and then you go over the page and glue the outers on. So I'd rather just put them all together, you know, and then we can get everything leveled up. Now we want to make sure that these wheels are all running true to each other, otherwise we'll have one tyre up and like this. So a quick way to do that before the glue all cures is to go around here with a pen. Okay, I'm trying to keep it away from the outer edge because, as we all know, the pen will keep coming through the paint if there's any pen left on there. Doesn't really matter on these other ones. So just get some pen on there. Every time I start talking I get a frog in my throat. Right, so we've got that now like that. Or you could just give it a very quick spray with some dark coloured paint. And then we can take our sanding stick and sand away and make sure that we are removing ink all the way around from all 4 rims, and then we know we've got everything dead true. And you can see there it's sanding all the way around on all 4 rims, so everything on there is lovely and true. So we'll do the same on all of them, and that means then we know we've got our wheels they're not going to be sort of sitting funny. So I'll do that on the rest of them just for a check, and then we'll come back once they've dried. So we've got all the wheels on, they're all sanded, everything's nice and straight. We've got the chassis sat down on a nice flat base and all the wheels are touching the ground. So let's get this rear suspension locked up, because if you remember I left that pivoting. The other thing I need to do actually is get my little bag of goodies, is get that rear prop shaft fitted, otherwise it might not go in after it's all fixed up. So we'll get that plopped in there. So that's going to go into there, go on, it's going to go in there, and then this end is going to go into the back of the fake, awful, horrible transmission. Let's put that down like that. Oh, come on. Right, I'll get this in and then I'll be back. Right, so I've got that in. It's bloody typical. It's, you know, you move the thing and it falls out, but can you get it back in? No. So we've got these 4 arms going down here. These are H68. You can see them here, and they would have you fit them in while the suspension's all off the chassis. But I've decided not to do that, as I've shown you in my previous videos. So these arms are basically going to fit onto here. So what we're going to do, we're going to use extra thin, and we're going to fit 2 of them. I'm going to put a drop of extra thin in each of those holes, just like so. Okay, so that's going to go on now. As you can see, I've just moved it, and then that's going to go onto there. I can see today we're going to have fun with things not playing while the camera's on. That seems to be the rule of thumb. As you can see, I'm putting quite a lot in because I want it to stay quite soft. So I'm going to put this on with tweezers, so that end can go on there, that end can go on there, like that. I'll do the same on this one. you can see, I'm wrestling with this now to get it to fit, and it looks like that's not going to fit on there. So let's just put it down, make sure everything's nice and straight. And as you can see, I'm glad this has happened, because there's a good example. As you can see, what's happening is those arms are lifting that suspension up so that those wheels aren't touching the ground. Now if I take this one away, there we go, it all sits down. So what we need to do in that situation is remove the pin from both sides. Okay, stuck to a hair, and then we can attach that piece onto there like so, and then this one here, put some glue in one end, put that end down on there, and then we can put this down, get all the wheels on the ground, and we can see how far out, that is on there, and how much that would have affected the actual position of the suspension. In fact, what I'm going to do, here is take these off, let the chassis, the suspension cure with these in position, because they're okay. So we'll put another drop of cement in there, and we'll let we'll get those into position, and we'll put it down, and we'll let the cement cure with this sat on a flat base. And then with these, I think what I'll do is just shorten them so they look better on there rather than having them way off. And that way then the suspension will be fixed in place. So we'll let that cure off for a good hour or two. And there we go. And I'm really glad that's happened, because that just goes to show you, if you'd have fitted these at step 3, as they were telling you, when you put your suspension into the chassis, you'd have had wheels up in the air. And this is why I completely disagree with this sequence of building this suspension up like this. Every manufacturer does it, every scale, every truck, everywhere. AFV Club, bloody AMT, Italeri, they all do it. And it's wrong, because it won't work. So that's why I've shown you my method of doing it. And luckily the proof is in the pudding, and you've now seen why it doesn't work. So we will, of course, the other thing, those axles, they just sit on those leaf springs, so if the axles are slightly tipped on any angle or whatever, that's going to affect it as well. So there's so many variables that can cause issues. You know, it's absolutely crazy. So bear that in mind when you're building your truck kits. Get it sat on its wheels before you fit anything that locks the rear suspension up. Right, I'll let that dry, I'll be back. So here we are, 3-4 hours later. Everything's all set and cured. Here comes that frog back in my throat again. Everything's all set and cured and all looking good. And as you can see, these arms, I actually cut the ends off, just shortened them a touch, and then glued them in place. I've also fitted these arms in the top here, if you can see them. That one there, I think that one was K4, was it? And that one was K5, or vice versa. That one there had to be, I had to remove the, well, in fact I removed the pin on the axle on both of them, because both of them would have put the axles out of kilter. To be honest, I think I've actually got this axle fitted on the spring, and I think I've actually got it slightly tipped back, which is why those arms appear too long. But then that would have made the top even worse. So not really sure what's going on there, but hey ho, it's done now, it's all there, it's in position, all the wheels are touching the ground and everything is straight. You can see when we put the rule across there, we've got the rule contacting all the wheels. Looking forward through the instructions, we've got this this part of this fair lead going on the back, and it's like a rear bumper type thing. So I've been looking at sort of bits and pieces I can add on here and get it all painted. And this here is quite a complex little structure. There's lots of ejector pin marks to clean out because they're going to affect the build. There's also an ejector pin mark on the outside of one of them. Where is it? There it is there. There's an ejector pin mark in there. So you might want to fill that one in or not. But we also got some gaps in there we need to fill in as well. I need to look at it as well, at what's going on here. Oh, there's the ejector pin mark I was thinking of, that one there. Look. So we need to get that sorted. It may be particular to my model, it may be a problem with all the kits, but this part here, which is E5, this part here, E5, should have a pin on it for this fair lead roller to go in. And there was no pin, there was just like a little tiny moulded bulge. It was like it was a short shot. So I just sort of drilled it out and put a piece of 0.8 plastic rod in there, as you can see. And the fair leads, they're moulded, rather than being moulded like that, they're moulded end to end, which is quite nice. But of course then they have to have a draft, and you've got a seam line going around the middle. So get these between your fingers and give them a good hard sanding. You can also see on there where there's a bit of mismatch in the tool, so I've put super glue, and it's the same on that one. You can see super glue in there. So just get those sanded out nice and smooth. So that one now will just drop in between there and sit in there, like so. Okay, so that's that in there. When you fit these, they've got a very small location. Just make sure you keep them parallel in all directions with your straight edge, and then they'll be good to go. And they've had a good sort of 2-3 hours to dry, which they need. I'm going to go on and fit some other little bits and greeblies now. We've got these towing eyes going in there and the hook. I'm also going to deal with that ejector pin mark there and there, and some other bits and pieces up here. So I'll get those on. So as you can see, we're darting around in the instructions a bit again, which is what I always do. Something else I noticed, they're telling you here to fit this part here, K55. Well, then when you turn the page and you're going to put the exhaust on, it's not there, and it's kind of been dropped down in the CAD model. So I don't really know what's going on there. But it's sat down, you know, it's basically the hump on the transmission, this lump here, has actually come through it. So I have a feeling if you fit that now, it's going to get in the way of the exhaust, because actually, when you look further on, it's not even there, it's not even fitted. Not good on these drawings. There we go, you get to there, it's there. There we are, you see it sits over the exhaust there, so I'm not sure if you fit that now, I'm not sure you better get the exhaust under there, so probably best leave that off until after the exhausts are fitted. So I'm going to get the towing hook done. I think there's one to go in the front as well at some point. Does that go in when we fit the front bumper? Nope. Do they ever tell us to put it in? This is interesting, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Right the way back here. So I'm going to do that as well, and that way we can get everything painted then on the chassis. So I'll get that lot done, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Right, it's the next day, many hours of work later. So I left you yesterday. I was going to fit these towing eyes and hooks, which we've done, so they're all in. I fitted that fair lead in there as well, so they're all done. The other thing I noticed, when they're moulded, here we go, frog in the throat again. When they're moulded, the centre, the ends are off, so as you actually turn the fair leads, they kind of go like this. So what you need to do is turn them to their position where they're sort of straight, and then get some glue on them, because I don't know if you can see it on that one. I'm turning that one, and you can see it's just not going true. So there we go. So that's that done. Anyway, there's little bits and pieces are glued on there. So going through the instructions, I just want to say one thing. I think it was Peter Roberts mentioned about this front bumper assembly. Now I'm going to give you the heads up and tell you what he was saying. Right, when it came to the front bumper assembly, he's done the same as me, and he's actually glued the bumper to this front cross member here. This part, oh dear, this part here, D9, he's glued the bumper to there the same as I did. Remember, everything was in one piece. And then what happens is when you glue the bumper in, that cross member goes in, and that gives the cross member its position. Now, as you can see, it's still not glued. What he's noticed is this cross member is actually sitting above the surface of the chassis rail. As you can see there, it's sitting proud. When you look in the instructions, you can see here that it's supposed to be sitting proud. You can see it there, it's sitting proud. You can see it here, it's sitting proud. And then you come to here and you go to fit the radiator, and what he's actually saying is the radiator won't fit because that cross member is sitting up. Now there's two holes here that aren't shown in the drawing, but there are two pegs. What have I done with that? I had it here just now. There are two pegs on the radiator here. And what he's saying is the radiator will not fit over that front cross member. So what I'll do is I'll cut this off the sprue now. Let's have a look. What he's saying is the radiator will not fit over that cross member, but it has a cutout in it. So I don't really know where he's coming from unless this cutout isn't big enough. So let's have a look. Will that fit over there? Well, the answer is almost. It will go, it's just that these pegs just need a bit of material taken off their inside edge, just like so. I think then it will go. There we are. So it does fit. So I don't quite know what you're alluding to, Peter, but there is a recess in the bottom of the radiator to go over that cross member. That's how it's supposed to be. So there we go. And also looking in the in my reference, the top of the cross member in the middle here is actually flush with the top of the bumper, which is sitting over the chassis rail, so obviously it does sit higher. But so I just wanted to raise that because I don't know why, in case any of you see that in the comments, I don't think it's really a valid point without wishing to be rude, because it does actually fit over there, as you can see. So there we go. So I can put that away. So that was the one thing I want to talk about. Now the other thing I want to talk about is what I've done here. So if we go back through the instructions again, if you remember, crazy process. They have us putting the front springs on, and then you're going to build up the rear axles, and then build up these battery boxes and stuff, and then build the winch, and then the wheels, and then the bumpers, and then oh, you're back on the chassis. So we blew all that out of the water, didn't we, and did it all a different way. So now what I've done is come back to working on this. So we've got this bit here going together, which is step 13, which is a toolbox and some air tanks and stuff. And then we've got this bit here going together, which is the battery boxes and some air tanks and stuff. Firstly, I want to say, I don't agree with their sequence, their assembly sequence here. What they're telling you to do is glue K58 and K59 onto these three cylinders. Well, there is no positive location for them to go on. That isn't a mould seam, that is a weld seam on there, so be careful not to sand it off. There is a weld seam on there, the mould seams are down the sides. So what I suggest is don't do that. do what I've done here and glue K59 and K58 onto F39. So glue the mounting brackets onto the main mounting bracket, if you like, and then what you can do is just sit these tanks in, and they will sit in like so, and you can just glue them into position rather than have to worry about keeping those two parts, this K58, K59, the right distance and parallel and everything. I would do it that way round. This box here, there's lots of ejector pin marks in it. Where is it? I've got it glued onto here. I filled them all and sanded them out, as you can see inside there. There's some great big ejector pin marks, but it's not really necessary because you can't really see any of it, but I wanted to make sure anyway, so I've done that. These parts here, H76, yeah, don't fit them just yet. And then all this is going together. We mentioned this before. Peter raised it. For some reason it says here make 12. You can only make 4. There's only enough to make 4 in the whole kit. So, but you only need 3. So just make 3. These bits here, you can see these bits here, H64 and A49. They are the brackets that go up into that piece that's going across. First things first, the holes in H58 aren't big enough to go over the pins in H49. I will show you those parts because we've got the spares here. In fact, no, I haven't got a spare because I broke one. But there's a rod that goes across with 2 holes in it, and it goes over those 2 pins in there. The holes in the rod aren't big enough, so you need to drill them out. I drilled them out to 0.8, I think it was. Yeah, it was 0.8. So drill them out. No, it wasn't 0.9. 0.9. So they go over those holes. Check 0.8 or 0.9, I can't remember now. What I can do, because I've got a caliper, I'll measure it for you, and then if you build in this kit you can make a note in the manual. What diameter is that little pin on there? 0.8. There we go. So drill them out 0.8 and then they'll fit over there lovely. I wouldn't suggest doing it like they've done it here. What I did was glued that in. You can see it's sticking out the sides here, this bar with these big wing nuts on it. Yeah. Glue that into there first and then glue these on. Now on the end of this bar there is a tiny little ring moulded on, absolutely minuscule, for these parts, to give you a guide for these parts. I just went in there with a 0.7 drill and just a couple of turns just to make a little indentation to give it a bit of a better location. And then when you glue them on, you've got that point there going up underneath, that piece there going up underneath, and then you've got these 2 arms here which glue onto the side of the battery box. So obviously they're holding everything down. Okay. Now these parts here, H76, they go in the sides, and they're absolutely tiny. I actually lost one. I put it on the instructions, picked up to look at something, and it had gone. So I've had to make this piece of plastic card up, just a scrap one, and that's going to go into the rear of this one here. You're never going to see it because it sits in the back. It's going to go in there, and that goes up against the chassis. So so that's that. And the other thing I found was these actual parts here, H64 and A49, are actually too short. Now as I say, I did make a little drilled indentation in there, but it was literally 10 pound deep. So what I've done is sanded off the bottom of the boxes, because what they're telling you to do here is fit these pieces and then fit the battery boxes. Well, if you do that, you're going to fit your battery box like that, so it's just going to sit there. But the idea is that hook that's in there is designed to go through that H76 piece. It's designed to go through and hook in. So that's gone in like that. Okay. So that's in there. You can see I've just broken away one side of the top, so I'm just going to glue that back in a sec. Give that a little push. There we go. So you can see that now looks lovely. It's all hooked in there and that, and it's actually brilliantly made to scale. It's beautiful. But the instructions are letting it down again. So what I've actually done is taken a very coarse sanding stick and removed a load of material from the bottom of this box, and I've done it so that the bottom is now just off level with the bottom of the hooks, and then they will hook in there. So what you can do is your H76s is glue them in one side, hook them in, and then you can glue the other sides in when it's all together. What I want to do first is get some paint on it. So you can see that I've sanded off these bottom of the battery boxes. If we look at the, let's just break that off of there. See that? Never do that at home, kids. That's what happens when you break parts off the sprue. It pulls a chunk of the part out. You can see the difference there in the radius on the standard part and the radius of what I've sanded. You can see the difference in height. It's massive. So probably taking about half a mil off. Well, I could almost measure it, couldn't I? In fact, what you could do, and this is the beauty of my builds, this is what I try and do for you guys. What you could do is, I can measure this now. Let me get this cleaned up a sec. Alright, so I've made those, I measured that, that's about 11.86, and these are down to 11.5. So 11.6, 11.82, 11.8, 11.5. So take about 0.3 off of there, and that will get you in the ballpark. There's no precision required. You just want to get them down so that they'll go through. Because if you don't, there's no way they're going to go through there. Because like 0.3 is like, you know, it's nearly half the width of that part. So so that's that. What else did I want to suggest? These parts here, very, very flimsy. You've got these two parts here that go on the back of this part here, and you can see that you've got these brackets on the side here, and then that's just a butt joint onto the back of that bracket there. So be a little bit careful with that. Also, you will notice on the back here there are two pegs. And when you come to the part in the instructions where you are fitting it, you can see that there are two pegs on this piece that go into, where's my pointer, that go into this hole and this hole, and then there are two pegs on this piece that go into this hole and this hole, as they're showing you in those arrows. Just one problem, they're not there. They're not flashed over, they're not in, you know, there's no indentation, there's nothing there. There should be a hole there and a hole there. So what I'm going to do is just literally cut those off, okay, and sand the back flush. They're supposed to be on an angle, so don't try and get them level. They're supposed to be on an angle because the chassis is on an angle. So I'm going to do that and then just sand the back flush. And then what we'll do is just glue them on, just a butt joint onto there. Just like so. So lots and lots of little issues with this kit. You can see the angles on there because it's going to fit in there like that, and you can see the chassis angled there. So that's going to fit. So we'll let these two pegs here, which they go in, they can determine the position of this whole assembly, and we'll just make sure that this goes in parallel at the same height. So there we are. So right here, right now, I want to get some painting done because I'm conscious that if I don't paint these battery boxes, we're going to have tan plastic in there. And I want to make sure I get those cylinders painted before they go on because I want to scene check them. Also this here, if we go over the page here, you can see this assembly here, D32, D33 and two H7s. That's the mounting for the fifth wheel. I thought I'll build that up because I want to be able to paint inside it, because once it's on the chassis here, wrong way around, here, you'll never get it on there. I do actually wonder if they're telling us to put this on the wrong way around, because you would think that ramp would be there for the fifth wheel, but I don't know. But anyway, you can see there, that's all done. And what I did, I actually built this up on the chassis and then levered it off, and now what I've done is sanded an angle onto those pins. You can see there's an angle on these pins. You could actually use a knife to put an angle on there, and then it will be able to clip on and off, or clip on anyway, not off. But I do need to check my references, because I've got a feeling, I don't see why that would be that way round. I've got a feeling that should go that way round, so that you've got a lead up for the fifth wheel. You know, call me stupid, but I just wonder if they're telling us to do it wrong there. So I'm going to check my references and have a look. But it certainly does look like all the way through the drawings they've got it that way around. So I'll check my references and see what I come up with. So I'll get some black painting done just for a change, and then we'll come back and do some more work. But right here, right now, really enjoying this. This is a real fiddly, finicky sort of in your face bit, but we will get there. We will get there. And I will just keep trying to give you tips of my discoveries and everything. Oh, the other thing is, ejector pin marks in here. Got rid of them, no real point because the battery covers it all up, so no real point. There's ejector pin marks in the bottom of this step, but they're raised so they're easy to sand out. These here need to be sanded out still. I haven't done that yet. I will get onto that. And I also put some more in these and sanded them out as well, these fuel tanks. So all in all, it's coming together very, very nicely. Right, I'll see you in a minute and I'll stop. There we go. There's the inside of that bracket there painted. I have checked my references, real photographs, and that actually does face forward, the angle. So I was wrong again. So I've just noticed I've got a bit of a sprue nib left on there. Just get rid of that. So there we are. So that's that done. That's all painted inside. So that can go on in a minute. Got the tanks done in light grey, as I say. Black is not really very good for seam checking, and you can see here straight away on this first one we have an issue with the seam there. So that line there, as I said, that's a weld line, ignore that. But we can go and inspect them when the paint's dry and sand those out and everything. But light grey is brilliant for checking for seams and stuff. So these battery boxes are painted, so I'm going to now attempt to fit one of these battery boxes into here, and I just literally want to do the sides and the bottoms of them just to make sure they're all painted. And I've gone in here with some black paint as well, and what I'm going to do is scrape some of that away from in there so that we get a better bond. We can also scrape some from here and from here. There we go. That one's going to be slightly different, so that one can go in there. Right, so these things go in. I don't suppose it really matters, but we'll do it as per the instructions so that I'm doing what they want me to do, which is not always good. So these things go in with their eyes facing forward. So this rear one's going to go in here, so I'm going to hook that into there. I doubt you can see a thing that I'm doing because it's all black. I'm just going to hook that into there like so, go over the top and pull it down, and then I'm going to do the next one, hook that into there and then down and whoops, like that, and then down and over the top. There we go. And then we can grab some extra thin. That's awkward, we can't get to that side, so what we'll do is lift this up. We'll put some extra thin in there, and we'll put some extra thin in there, and then drop them down. Reason being, I cannot get into that side from underneath because the bottle bracket is in the way. So then we can come in here and just put a drop in there, let that capillary under, put a drop in there, let that capillary under, and just hold these boxes in place like so. There we go. So they're in, they're nice and parallel, they're glued down. Job done. So now we can take one of our brackets. I'm not going to worry about trying to clean up the sprue nib. This is going to be fun. I think what I'll do is hold the, where did it go? You can see how easy these are to lose. They're absolutely tiny. We can hook that over that hook there. Wait, it just fell straight off again. Ugh. So we can hook that over there like so, let gravity do its thing, and then we're going to have to try and turn it around and get it glued in. There we go. Believe it or not, it has actually gone into the hole. And then I'm going to get a drop of quick setting so I don't have to hold it for too long. Put that in there and then just hold that bracket down. Make sure it's straight. There we go. I'll just hold that, let that go off, and then I'll do the other one the same. So I'll be back when I finished the other two. And voila, there we go. You can see those batteries are down now, held down with their clamps, with their hooks through their eyes. And this back one, I used a little piece of plastic card to hold it to replace the one I lost. So I think that's a very nice little part of the kit actually. It does look very, very nice and to scale. But you need to clean the parts up. There's mould seams and everything on them, on these hooks, and that, get rid of all that and they'll look lovely. If you leave the mould seams on when you start putting washes down and stuff, they won't look very nice at all. So there we go. So we'll make sure they're all level and parallel and square and all that. There's a couple of sink marks in the top of them as well. You can see I've just filled them with a drop of super glue. I didn't go in and sanded them out. So we can get these tanks inspected now. This piece here, as I say, I've sort of thinned out the pins. So that's going to go on like that, and then as you can see it will sort of spring over, he says. Let's get the front to line up first. There we go, that's lined up now. So this side can just push over just like that and clip in. There we are. So that's in now. If you want to get it off again, just get a blade up behind and lever it off. In fact, you could even just leave that clipped in place. But probably a good idea to put a drop of glue on it because it's obviously under stress because it's clipped in place and staying there. So you may find that over time the bit that's holding it together will sort of just let go. So we'll just get a drop of glue in there and let it capillary under. Doesn't need to be crazy. There we go, so that's that on. So we are really starting to clear the bench a bit now. I've thousands, not thousands, but hundreds of parts everywhere. So that box there is done. That's going to go on the side here, like so. That's going to fit in there behind that fuel tank. It's going to go in here. So we can get these cylinders inspected. As I say, this is a great way of checking your mould seams. You can see on the end of that one straight away, hopefully you can see on there is a remnant of the actual mould seam. You can sand that away, just like so. Look down the sides, all looking good. So just looking around. We can see again on the end of there, we can see a mould seam. So I'll just go around and get all those sanded out and then we'll get them primed in black and get them glued on. The reason I do this little bits and pieces of black is because when this goes on, I think is it this one? I think it's this one going in there. When that goes in there, it's going to be very difficult to get black up in there and down in there and everything. That's why I do it all. As I say, I've told you countless occasions it's what I do for making shadows. So there we are. So I'll come back in a minute when I've got the rest of this done, and then we'll push on. Just want to cover one little mod I've done here. When we look at this step here, this toolbox, we have these tanks that go on the back here. They're made in two halves, and they have a very, if I just pull that out of there, if I could get it out. I can't get it out now. Who misses? There we go. If you look on the back of there, just either side of that hole, there's a tiny little tab, and that is designed to go into there and fit. But you can imagine that is just like, literally just going to fall off as soon as you look at it. So what I've done, I've got some 1mm plastic rod. I've drilled a 1mm hole in there, and I've gone for the middle just above where the fitting is, and then I've done the same here, gone the middle just above. So now when we fit these little tanks, they will go in there and they will be a nice solid fit, and we can knock them and everything without them falling off every 5 minutes. The actual finished position is not overly madly critical because I don't think it's very visible anyway, but you can see there we got them square and everything, and they're all nice and in there. So there we go. So that's that. So we're going to get these primed, and then I will come back. Like I keep saying, I'm going to come back after I've done the priming, and then I don't do the priming and I come back. But just trying to give you lots of little tips, that's all. And so we are ready to get all these glued together. So put a drop of extra thin into there, drop in there. It's quite warm today, it's drying out very fast. And then we get those two pins into there, he says. There we go, that's gone in. And we'll do the same on this one. Just look at that's not straight, is it, that one? There we are. Let's just get a drop of cement into there and into there. And if I can, into there and into there. There we are. So that should be enough to hold them in place. Of course, if you want to go super detailed, there'll be lots of lines and everything coming off of these. You can see here, I should have seam checked before I fitted them because I've got the witness of a seam there. I don't think it's going to matter because it's going to be butted up against something else. But I should have checked that. In fact, I'll check these. Yes, you can see here, there's a witness of a seam. Just sand until both sides of the seam are tan plastic. That one's okay. And that one's okay. Right. So now these are going to go in here. Now these go in a certain order. Have a short end and a long end. So that one is going to go there, and the short end just shows through. I'm just going to put a drop of cement in there and a drop in there and let it capillary around. Wow, that held well, didn't it? So it kind of sits in, and you twist it, it'll kind of seat down. You can see what they're trying to depict here is like a U-bolt holding the tank in. See on the bracket there's nuts, and then you've got the actual U-bolt going around the tank, which is really nicely done actually. So much better than I've seen on some kits where you just get like a lump. And then this one's going to go the same way round. Just like so. And then this one goes with its long end out that side. So this one has a long end, so that one's going to go in there. So I'll get a drop of extra thin on there, drop of extra thin on there. And then get that one sat in its rightful place. So we can see there we basically want to get all those U-bolts in line, which they pretty much are. It's the shadows that make it, if it looks off to you, it's the shadows. If I look across it like that, you can see they're all in line. So that's good. Not that it really matters, because all you're going to see is that, the end of it. So that's those all glued in, so they can be left to dry. And now we've got to assemble this frame, which is not going to be easy. So I'm going to glue this step onto here. Just like so, give that a squeeze. And then that in turn is going to fit onto there. That way round. So we're seeing even less of those tanks than I thought we were. There we go. So that's that all done. So that's going to remain quite pliable and pullable, aboutable. So when we come to fit the chassis, it'll be easy. We'll fit this and then get the back end to line up, because remember there's no pegs on there. So I think I'm going to call that a day for this one, because that's nearly the hour, isn't it? Thank you for your patience. Thank you for sticking around. Hope you've enjoyed that. Just going to see how this looks. I can never find the right peg when I want it. There we go. So we can put those two in there. I was kind of hoping that was going to stay there on its own, but it's not. And then this one here can get slightly raised, and I can peg it there. That way they will dry in the correct orientation. I'm just looking now, I think I've got that step drooped. Oh no, it's okay, it's because it's drooped on that one. So yeah, pick that up and look down it and make sure that this is perpendicular to this, and that this one here is lined up with that one, because there is a bit of movement in that joint. I'm just going to leave that to dry. In fact, it's probably best to stand it on its roof to dry. Just put a drop more extra thin in there just to give it some good weld action. and we'll just leave that to dry for a couple of hours so that it becomes nice and solid before we start messing around with it. So there we go, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all for part 5. Hope you've enjoyed this. We hadn't really got a hell of a lot done in this one, but it's been a lot of little bits and pieces, hasn't it? And hopefully lots of little tips for you guys. So I'm going to go through my manual now, and we can cross off bits that we've fitted, like those tanks and stuff, and then we can get our black felt pen, and we're really getting somewhere now. And we've also got this one here, so we can cross that off of there, and we can, there. So we are really starting to push on. That winch is going to be probably a whole bloody segment all its own. It's going to be such a complex part. So I'll see you all for part 5 probably when we do the winch. So the winch is, if you're wondering, the winch is here, and as you can see you've got the actual winch itself, which is lots and I bet it's going to be loads of ejector pin marks now to deal with. You've got the hydraulic tank there, we have to fit cables and stuff to it, and then we've got all the pulley mechanism here and the exhaust pipes, which we've already got assembled, so we're doing some rust on them, and we've got all the photo etch guards to go out. It's going to be lots and lots of work, but it's going to be quite an interesting little piece, I think. So I'll see you for part 5. Hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for watching. And if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the like and subscribe, and as I say, happy modelling. Bye for now.